It is 1:30 and time to call to order the Oklahoma City Traffic and Transportation Commission. We'll start with roll call. Commissioner Varnell.
Here.
Commissioner Littlefield. Here. We have a new commissioner, Commissioner Jeremy Carnes.
Here.
Good to have you. Commissioner Schuline.
Here.
Commissioner Wynn is not here. Commissioner George.
Yeah.
And Commissioner Cornett is out. So we'll begin with, is there a motion to either accept or reject the minutes of the December meeting?
Motion for approval.
We have a motion from approval from Commissioner Varnell. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Schuline. And we need your votes, please.
I'm a yes. Still trying to log in.
And motion passed. Next, we move on to reports from Traffic Services Division.
All right, you've got our standard monthly reports in front of you. We've got our list of unfunded signals that have been approved through the Traffic Commission. I want to call your attention to two of them, which have now been funded and will be built using the city's unit price contracts. Those are at the intersections of South Walker Avenue and West California Avenue, which is over by John Rex Elementary School. And then there's a signal that will be built over at Danforth Farms Boulevard and Dartmoor Boulevard on Northwest 192nd Street. So in our next report, neither one of those will appear. Moving on to our alternative speed abatement program, you've just got the standard report for locations that have been installed. We've since the last time we'd met, there is an additional allocation, and as far as the program goes, there is another $95,000 which has been allocated towards use in funding applications. In our administrative report on yield and parking restrictions, you've got that in front of you, and for the first time, there is a turn restriction which has been approved pursuant to an ordinance which the Commission recommended to the City Council, which was passed last March. And this is a no left turn on southbound Classen Boulevard at Belle Isle Boulevard. That was requested by a business on the east side of Classen, and it was actually a left turn that would only go into their particular driveway. For safety concerns for their staff and for customers, they asked for a turn restriction which would prohibit southbound left turns in. And as they were the only party affected, it was a relatively straightforward matter to go ahead and approve that for them.
Good.
And so that's been completed. And then lastly, we at the tail end of this meeting, the Planning Department will have a presentation that they'll be making on the Vision Zero Action Plan. And we're deferring the presentation on that so that applicants for the other items can be heard, and it will give the planning staff a better opportunity to make their presentation so the members of the commission can ask questions if needed.
Okay.
And other than that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have on our Section 3 reports.
Okay. Any questions or comments from staff? Okay. We'll find anything from the municipal counselor's office?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Today we do not have anything on the consent docket, so we'll move on to items for individual consideration. We'll start with item 5A, a request from Brian Cohen from Ward 3 for an all-way stop control at Angel Oak Drive and Southwest 41st Street. Is there anyone here to speak on this matter? Need your name, your address, and you have 5 minutes to speak.
Okay, so Brian Cohen, address is 9101 Southwest 32nd Street. So I saw the report that came in. When we first submitted that, there was a fence on the northeast corner that was actually against the road. There had been attempts previously to get that moved because there was no visibility. As you see here in the picture at the top, there is visibility now. At the time we were spending a couple months trying to get people to answer the doors for the petition. They ended up deciding to move the fence, so there is some more visibility. But we still want to look at the all-way stop. One of the things is, as you see, you're looking north here in that top photo. That road ends there. There's a section of land that's being developed currently. So currently there's about 550 homes in this development. When that development finishes, there'll be 960 homes. So that road coming into that intersection will receive most of those homes as an entrance. The cross street there at 41st is also another entrance for the neighborhood, but also connects to the neighborhood on the west side as well. So based on the amount of traffic that we have today, we expect a significant increase there as well. And so we would like to go ahead and have that considered based on that. Anything else you need? All right.
Possibly. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak?
I don't believe so.
Okay, real fine. Is there a motion regarding item 5A?
Motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve from Commissioner Carnes.
Yes.
Second?
There is a second from Commissioner George. Any discussion on the matter? Okay, your votes, please.
Really?
Oh, go back to hit computer, and then it gets. There you go. We got to help the new guy.
Exactly. And
We've all been there.
I don't mind the help.
And the motion has passed. Thank you. Move on to
It'll take a
item
couple weeks, but you'll get those pretty quickly.
5B, a request from Sharon Hooper from Ward 3, a traffic signal at North Mustang Road and Northwest 6th Street. Is there anyone here to speak on this? Okay, then I'll look to Stuart. You have room.
All right, well, you've got our staff comments before you. At this particular intersection, when we ran our manual on uniform traffic control devices, traffic signal warrant analysis, of which there are 9 warrants, we found that based on the posted 45-mile-an-hour speed limit on Mustang Road, this particular location will meet the criteria listed in Warrant 1, which is the 8-hour warrant, Warrant 2, which is a 4-hour volume warrant, and Warrant 3, which is the peak hour warrant. Warrant 3 is kind of an uncommon warrant because it's not usually used in a situation where you've got, where something is surrounded mostly by residential or light commercial uses, but there is the Xerox plant is immediately to the south of this particular location, so this particular warrant would be applicable for consideration. As far as crash history goes, this particular intersection does not meet Warrant 7, which is a crash experience warrant. But in the manual, if any one of the warrants is met for a particular location, then as far as making a decision to consider signalized traffic control, from that standpoint, the signal warrants are considered met if you meet any one of the 9. So in this particular case, based on the 45-mile-an-hour speed limit on Mustang Road, it currently meets 3 of the warrants. Now, had Mustang Road been posted at 40 miles an hour, it wouldn't have met any of the signal consideration warrants. So action on this item is going to be at the discretion of the commission, and should the commission make a recommendation for the traffic signal, staff would recommend that it include widening Mustang Road for a southbound left turn lane to Northwest 6th Street. Other than that, I'm happy to answer any of the questions you might have about the application. Oh, there is one other item. The commission's recommendation on this particular case was going to be subject to being sent over to the Oklahoma Department of Transportation, because in this part of the city, Mustang Road is also State Highway 4. And so because this would be a traffic control change on a state-controlled facility, the Highway Commission has the final authority on whether or not a signal or any other type of traffic control device will be allowed at this intersection.
Stuart, what does ODOT or whoever is going to review that from the state, what would they typically look for here?
What would they,
If we sent this over to them, what are they going to basically look at to see if they're going to okay that or not?
well, when we send the recommendation over, it's going to be a complete copy of our study, so they can review the same warrant. The warrant analysis has been done for them. They will probably, well, they'll send it to their traffic engineering group, and they'll take a look at it, and the Highway Commission will get a recommendation from them on which way to go. But like I said, at this particular intersection, if you look at some of the other items, even though this location does pass our decision site distance criteria, but it's just got slightly more than what the minimum requires. It does not have a remarkable crash history, so it's hard to say what ODOT may decide to do on this. One of the last times we'd sent a signal over to them, it was several years back, and this was on US 66 over a street called Grant Boulevard, which is just to the east of the Kilpatrick Turnpike, or now Interstate 344. And at the time we sent that over, it was shown that the signal was going to meet warrants, but ODOT did not approve it. But now, as I understand it, ODOT's actually looking at funding their own safety project to build a signal at that particular intersection. So it's hard to say what will happen when it reaches the state.
We would still pay for it, though, if they don't pay that. We, the city.
Presumably, yes, because unless the state has got like safety funds that they decide that they might want to use towards a project like this, it would probably just fall to the city to build.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? No? Okay. We'll go to a vote. Oh, I'm sorry. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve, subject to the staff recommendations on widening Mustang Road.
Okay, motion to approve from Commission with staff recommendations from Commissioner Carnes. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner George. Any other discussion? Okay, your votes, please. Okay, and motion has passed. Go on to item 5C, a request from Ward 7. This would be a traffic signal at Longford Way, Brenton Boulevard, and Northwest 150th Street. Is there anyone here to speak on behalf? Yes, your name, address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
I'm Denise Metry, 14805 Maple Lake Drive. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to come before you and express my opinions and my concerns. I will be brief. I have 4 points I would like to address, and I think most of them in the letter that I wrote. First, there's no traffic signal between Western and Santa Fe on 150th. It's a pretty long stretch without a light. The result is continuous flow of traffic going to east and west. And coming out of my neighborhood, Longford, coming from Longford, it's very difficult to make a left or right turn out of that neighborhood. You have to wait several minutes, sometimes 5. Also, there's a steep incline from the west on 150th, which it makes it difficult to see cars that are traveling on high speed going east on 150th. So if you're trying to turn left, they're coming over the hill and you really can't see them until they're right on you. And then lastly, on a personal note, I was rear-ended by someone going at a high speed on 150th going west as I was attempting to make a left turn back into my neighborhood on Longford Way. And that was very costly. That's it. Again, thank you for your time and consideration.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? Okay, staff?
All right, you got our comments before you. With respect to our warrant analysis, this particular intersection currently does not satisfy any of the 9 MUTCD warrants for considering use of signalized traffic control. We did provide a fair amount of extensive commentary in the staff report. When Ms. Metry originally submitted this particular request, it was for the intersection of Longford Way and Northwest 150th. But because Brenton Boulevard is just offset 90 feet to the east, it's functionally close enough that if the city was to look at putting in signalized traffic control, Brenton Boulevard would have to be considered. And so when we prepared this item, we also included Brenton Boulevard, because when you do signal warrant analysis, especially when you're looking at traffic volumes coming in from the side street, you're looking for the side street that has the highest volumes and demonstrating the greatest needs. And by saying that, there can be certain times of day when the volumes on Longford Way may be greater than they are on Brenton Boulevard. And so you could potentially get an intersection like this where, in order to meet signal warrants, Longford Way might contribute towards some of the warrant criteria, and Brenton Boulevard might contribute. But in either case, neither one of those streets has sufficient side street volumes entering this intersection for this to satisfy any of the signal warrants. A kind of a problematic aspect of this particular signal is that, or intersection, is the offset between Longford Way and Brenton Boulevard. Because Brenton Boulevard is offset to the east of Longford Way, trying to manage left turns, if the intersection was signalized, would result in a potential where left turns, you'd never be able to run left turns from 150th Street concurrently.
Right.
Your stop bars would have to be set to the west of Longford Way and to the east of Brenton Boulevard. So you'd have a huge gap in between those locations. And managing a signal and phasing it to be able to handle left turns would be problematic, to say the very least. So we're not recommending use of a signalized traffic control here, but we are recommending that maybe the commission send an endorsement to Public Works to include a project in the 2025 general obligation bond to add a center left turn lane on Northwest 150th Street. And reason for that is that a center left turn lane can be used to make basically what is like a two-stage left turn. So a driver coming out from Longford Way, if they need to make a left turn, if they get a break in traffic from on eastbound 150th Street, they can go ahead and cross those lanes, and then they can wait to finish their turn in the center left turn lane and wait for a gap in traffic in westbound 150th Street and then continue the turn. So it does give them that option. And it also provides drivers that are on 150th Street wanting to turn left into Longford Way or Brenton Boulevard the ability to sit and wait out of traffic's way. You know, at this particular location, even though it doesn't meet the crash experience for it, there were only like 4 crashes in the past 3 years, but 3 of the 4 crashes were rear-end collisions where a driver was waiting to make a left turn from 150th Street onto one of the side streets. And so it's for that reason that we're recommending consideration of, the commission sending a recommendation for inclusion of a center turn lane on 150th Street. And this would run from about Worthington Lane to Traditions Lake Parkway. Another thing I want to bring up is that there is a traffic signal that's pending funding that's over at 150th and Traditions Lake Parkway, and it will, from time to time, for the residents on Brenton Boulevard and Longford Way, it will periodically create gaps in the westbound traffic flow, which will help ease, create a few more opportunities for those residents to make left turns.
Yep.
And so for that reason, and because of the offset, the awkward geometry that we'd have with Brenton Boulevard and Longford Way as far as using a traffic signal would go, a center left turn lane that would run from about Worthington Lane over to Traditions Lake Parkway, I think would probably be of the best benefit for area residents. And beyond that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have on the application.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions or comments so far? Is there a motion regarding item 5C?
Well, I can try it. Basically, I move to deny the application, but with the with the recommendation to go to Public Works, right? To widen the street for a center left-hand turn lane from Worthington Lane to Traditions Parkway, Traditions Lake, which I think that will be a huge help in that area. I mean, because it's a bad mile, half mile there. It's really, really packed up. So that'll help a lot. And then that new light that was approved a couple of years ago, whenever it goes in, will be a huge help too. So.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to disapprove item 5C, but to recommend a center left turn lane be established in the streets which were outlined. Okay. Any questions, comments about the motion? We have a motion and a second, so your votes, please. Okay, the motion has passed, which means the request has been denied, but with the request for the center turn lane. Okay? Okay. We will move on to item 6, which is comments from the citizens. Do we have any comments? Okay, at this time we will have a presentation for Vision Zero.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for having us today. My name is Raul Orozco, and I'm from Kimley Horton Associates. We're the primary consultant on the Vision Zero action plan for the city of Oklahoma City, and we'd like to give you guys a quick overview regarding our progress so far. So just to give you guys an outline of our report, essentially we've divided it into 3 parts, which Chapter 1 contains the main visionary elements of the process, as well as the engagement component that I will detail a lot further here in a little bit. Part 2 contains a significant chunk of our analysis that we conducted, and then Part 3 goes into a lot of the recommendations that resulted from the analysis that was conducted. So just to talk a little bit about Part 1, of course, our main source of or guiding principle that we utilized here is Vision Zero, which is essentially a strategy that is used to eliminate traffic fatalities, serious injuries, and has the benefits that are outlined here on the right. One of them that I wanted to highlight was equity, of course, which this project was funded by the Safe Streets and Roads for All program at the federal level, and equity is one of the main requirements as part of that process. So we underwent a very in-depth equity analysis, and then as well with a lot of the other benefits that I mentioned before. So that led us to the creation of the mission statement, in which we had an exercise with the Vision Zero Advisory Board, of which Ms. Cornett and Mr. Nguyen, who are not here today, were a part of, as well as Captain Fredrickson, who is here today. So we did what's called a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis to identify the priorities. If you could go back to the previous one, please. Thank you. So to identify the priorities of that board, and then we landed on this mission statement, which reads, the City of Oklahoma City aims to eliminate road fatalities through strategic infrastructure enhancements, policy advocacy, and inclusive education. The city is dedicated to protecting all road users and promoting a sustainable, vibrant community. Thank you. And then in regards to our project timeline, the line that you see at the top, the Vision Zero Advisory Board, that board was comprised of members of this commission, as well as the City Council, members of the Planning Commission, as well as some other city departments, and then some residents and other stakeholders as well. So we met with them a total of 5 times so far. We will meet with them once again at the conclusion or adoption of the plan. To start off the process, we engaged in what is called a safety launch, joint with the Association of Central Oklahoma Governments. So they actually underwent their own comprehensive safety action plan process, kind of in parallel to this process as well. So that was an opportunity for very key stakeholders to come together and talk about Vision Zero and kick off both of those processes. And then we underwent a very extensive public engagement effort from June through December. And then where we are currently is at the final Vision Zero action plan report. Just to highlight a little bit our in-person engagement, like I said already, the Regional Safety Summit was held in February. We had 2 rounds of pop-up events and public workshops that kind of mirrored each other. The first round of those, which was kind of geared towards soliciting feedback on our project website. So the online survey and the online map survey, in which we allowed for people to indicate various locations within the city in which they identified certain traffic issues that they noticed, and then as well as a written survey in which people were able to identify their priorities as well. And then the second round of pop-up events and public workshops was geared towards presenting the essentially the results of the plan, the recommendations, and to garner feedback on those as well. And then finally, the public hearings, which of course this hearing here today, as well as both of the Planning Commission dates, which happened on January 9th, and then January 23rd, which was yesterday, in which the Planning Commission recommended to Council to approve this process. And finally, the City Council, which will happen in February. So in terms of our online engagement, like I said, those 2 surveys, the online written survey and then the map survey, of which those results you see on your screen today, that ran from the 7th of June through the September 9th. And we had a total of about 1,800 contributions, which when we're comparing to other communities of similar sizes, that's a pretty excellent turnout, essentially, on all of our online engagement opportunities. So that brings us over to our engagement, which part 2 only contains chapter 3, which is where we're doing a significant portion of our analysis. In terms of our crash analysis, we were able to collect data from the Oklahoma Highway Safety Office, which had a range from 2017 through 2021, and the total crashes were around 75,000. The results of that analysis are kind of shown on the top right, that graphic on the top right. One of the things we wanted to note here is that while crash counts were generally trending in a downward direction, fatalities were not following. Fatalities were actually increasing over that 5-year period. So we were tasked with identifying the reasons for some of those, some of the causes of that, whether that be some contributing factors, either some environmental or roadway characteristics that were identified, or other reasons as well. So another portion of our analysis that we did was what we called the crash profiles. So we selected the 8 categories that you see on the right here, and then intersected them with each other and identified the top 5 combinations of those 8 characteristics, roadway characteristics or environmental characteristics, that yielded the highest percentages of crashes and highest severities of crashes as well. So this created a network of 5 different networks within the overall total network, in which the City of Oklahoma City will be able to go back afterwards and identify some specific countermeasures for those combinations of characteristics. And a huge component of our project was the high injury network, which is essentially a network within the overall total network that yielded or had higher densities of crashes when compared to other segments of similar functional classification and similar roadway volumes. So after this was essentially a data-driven approach that was combined with a qualitative examination in conjunction with our advisory board. So we presented an initial version of this high injury network, and then after some exercises with our advisory board, we landed on what you see on your screen here, which totals to about 6.6% of the total roadway network. And a very stark and imperative statistic to highlight here is that 87% of all fatal crashes that were experienced in that 5-year period were included within this 6.6% of the roadway network. So we were able to highlight and pinpoint those locations in which the city is going to be able to get the highest return on their investment after this process has been completed and after a lot of the countermeasures that were recommended are realized, essentially. And from this high injury network, we landed on 7 study corridors, which totaled 15 roadway miles, in which we dove a lot deeper and recommended specific countermeasures at very targeted locations for the city to move on to the implementation phase after this project is completed. So that brings us to part 3, which is mainly where we're highlighting a lot of our recommendations, and starting with the safety countermeasures. So the safety countermeasures were essentially split into a 3-tiered hierarchical structure, starting with the systemic countermeasures, which highlighted overall recommendations of countermeasures that could be implemented at a system-wide level. These are not going to be very specific locations in which countermeasures should be implemented. They're more at a general scale when the city sees specific issues. This toolbox is meant to be that first line of countermeasures to be applied. And next is the targeted countermeasures, which, like I mentioned, are within those 7 study corridors or 15 miles of corridor. That we actually went and pinpointed specific locations. And then finally, at a more granular level, where the countermeasure exhibits, in which we went into the targeted recommendations and actually drew out what some of these treatments could look like at a conceptual level. So they didn't go all the way through to full-scale 100% engineering design. It was more of a conceptual design of what some of these treatments could look like. So just to highlight the systemic countermeasures, like I said, this is meant to be a toolbox for the city to use in the future at a systemic level. So each of the countermeasures were selected from what is called the FHWA's proven safety countermeasures. So this is essentially a national database of countermeasures that are proven to work. So there's been several studies and a lot of research done on these countermeasures. So that's where we selected these. And each of the countermeasures has an associated crash modification factor, which essentially is indicating the ratio of crashes that can be expected after the countermeasure has been implemented. So in theory, the lower the CMF, the more effective it will be at reducing crashes. However, I did want to highlight that we don't want to discount those countermeasures that maybe have higher CMFs, because a lot of them may be low cost and a little bit higher effectiveness when deployed at a larger scale. So that's why we created this combination of countermeasures that can be implemented at both urban and rural contexts. So not every single countermeasure should be recommended at every location within the city, but this definitely provides you all with kind of that first toolbox to look at. And then finally, that brings us over to more of our policy and maybe organizational recommendations that we made. So there's a total of 27 action items that were recommended, and they were organized into 5 pillars, which mirrored the national framework of the Safe System approach, which included safer people, safer roads, safer speeds, safer vehicles, and post-crash care. So once again, we worked together with our advisory board to devise a set of actions that were appropriate and would advance the level of traffic safety and increase, or I guess reduce fatalities and serious injuries within the city. So each of the actions is organized by action, which of the emphasis areas, and these are the Oklahoma SHSP emphasis areas, and then the time frame for implementation, both short range, less 2 to 5 years, mid-range, less than 2 years is short range, 2 to 5 years is mid-range, and then long-term, a little bit more ambitious actions were kind of that 5+ year time frame. And then some implementation partners that would be assisting the city in implementing each of the actions, and then finally a funding source for the actions as well. And finally, in order to keep this process transparent, we created a public-facing interactive crash dashboard that included the high injury network. So all of those high injury network segments that you saw on the screen previously, those are available for the public to view online. And then the interactive crash map, in which all of the crashes that we observed over that 5-year time frame, there's a variety of filters, some of which were used to create the crash profiles, are in this toolbox, in this dashboard as well. And then a variety of additional layers that could shed some light into some of the trends of crashes for the public to see as well. And the link is to that dashboard is actually embedded within this presentation. So if you'd like to see it after this, you're definitely welcome to do so. So just to highlight some next steps, of course, we already went through the Planning Commission portion of our public hearings, and then today's meeting, of course, just kind of giving you guys an overview. And finally, we're going to introduce the process to City Council on February 11th, and finally go for consideration for adoption on the 25th. And essentially the most important, what I believe is the most important portion is the capital grant opportunity, which is the implementation grant that goes along with this process. So in order for the city to be eligible for this implementation grant opportunity to actually go and build and construct a lot of the recommendations that came out of this process, the city had to first undergo this project, the Vision Zero action plan. So that opens up in March, theoretically. That is a little bit to be seen just with the new administration. We're still hoping that will open in March, but that's where we are in the process and some next steps. So at this time, I'll entertain some questions that the group has.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, any comments? Commissioner Littlefield?
Mine usually never make sense at first, so we'll give it the best shot. I think this is an amazing program, and your presentation is outstanding. I've had some conversations with some colleagues on the Traffic Commission over the years about what we observe as road users and what we hear from our citizens in our various wards. Cases where you've got a traffic signal at Classen Boulevard and Northwest Expressway and the light turns red for the left turn lane and 6 more cars keep going. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So my question is, in the toolbox, where does enforcement lie? Or is the plan is that we build our transportation structure where people can't be doing that? Or are we going to put more emphasis and get some more help with people just obeying the current laws?
Yeah, that's a great question, Commissioner Littlefield. So part of the recommendations that I highlighted today are the design level recommendations that are geared towards creating a safer system overall. But a lot of the highlight, and we worked, of course, with Captain Frederickson on some of these actions as well, are to some of the policy recommendations that are included in Chapter 5 are geared towards some of those educational, so fixing the culture of drivers within the city, some of those, and like you noticed in the mission statement, part of that is inclusive education. So changing that cultural aspect of the community, but as well within that post-crash care pillar of the implementation plan and implementation matrix lies that increased level of enforcement. So that's actually specifically one of the actions that's outlined there. And I think if you move on to some of the further slides, I did have some discussion slides for us to kind of look at. It's going to be quite a bit further down. Yeah, just try to bring some examples of some of our engagements, some examples of our design recommendations as well, and then finally some examples of our policy. If you go down to, I believe it's the gray colored ones, it's going to be the post-crash care. Yeah, so see that last action here, kind of continue Oklahoma City Police Department partnership with OSO to improve road user behavior and an advanced educational safety campaign. So that's, again, one of the specific ones that we're looking into. And then as well, analyzing some of the data and then developing citation charges that are appropriate to essentially discourage that sort of behavior. Yep, absolutely.
I'm just kind of curious, have y'all broken down the distinction between problems with the driver as opposed to problems with the condition of the road, whether it be the road condition as far as maintenance or speed? I mean, have you broken that out to where we can isolate what we can attribute these fatalities to drivers as opposed to the road conditions?
Partly, I think the approach that we mainly took is kind of a more systemic approach, what we can control. However, a lot of the analysis in Chapter 3 did include some discussion or discourse on where impaired driving may have been an issue, distracted driving may have been an issue. So those were data points that were acquired through the Oklahoma Highway Safety Office. Some of the discussion there, however, is that in some instances it was difficult for the police officer to prove that somebody was maybe on their phone or distracted or something like that after the crash had already happened. So that can all be taken, of course, with a grain of salt. But Chapter 3 did highlight some of those behavioral issues as well.
I'm sure it's difficult to distinguish between those two, but do you have some rough percentage as far as driver attributing fault to the driver as opposed to conditions of the road?
Not off the top of my head, but Chapter 3 does definitely highlight some of those behavioral kind of contributing factors as well.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you all so much.
Okay. We will move on to comments and reports from the Traffic Commission. We'll start with Commissioner Burnell,
None from me, thanks.
Commissioner Littlefield,
Nothing for me?
Commissioner Carnes.
Just that I look forward to getting to know you all and work with you and representing the great city that I grew up in. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Commissioner Schuline.
Nothing to report.
Commissioner George.
No, nothing from me. Just welcome over there on Ward 3.
Officer, do you have anything to add today?
No, I don't have any report, no. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If that's everything on the agenda, and I do want to mention that today is Commissioner Schuline's last meeting.
What?
I'm not happy to announce that by any means, but I want to thank you for your service. You've been on the commission how long now?
I think 8 years, since my bride. Bob, how long have you been on?
It's been 80 years.
Yeah, it has been. It has been an honor and a pleasure, and I've really enjoyed working with each and every one of you, and I wish you all the best, and I'll be here cheering you on from the back in the future.
Well, thank you, and thank you very much for your service. I think you've done a really good job, and you've brought a lot of insight,
Oh, thank you.
and so we do appreciate
I
that.
appreciate that.
Okay, if there's nothing else, our meeting is adjourned.